If you haven't noticed, 2023 seems to be the year of the OLED. And it's just not about TVs and monitors, but also when it comes to mechanical keyboards. In this channel alone, I've reviewed at least 3 keyboards already with a display, with the ROG Azoth, the Funtech MaxFit 81, and Red Magic's first mechanical keyboard, all of which, by the way, you can watch the full reviews using the links below. Now, what we have here is from a relatively new brand, at least here in the Philippines, the Noir Timeless82. The Noir Timeless82 features an exploded 75% layout, hot swappable sockets, tri-mode connectivity, gasket mount design, RGB underglow, and most importantly, an OLED display. All inside an ABS plastic chassis with pretty much all the modern sound dampening materials inside. It also sounds really good out of the box and is easily one of the better options when it comes to keyboards with an OLED display. It's not perfect, there are some compromises made, and I'll share them all with you, including a quick teardown experience and essentially everything you need to know. With that being said, let's get into it. The packaging is pretty basic but not cheap at all, with some key features and details around the box. Inside it we have the user manual, which you can take a screenshot of now. We also have a non-braided USB Type-A to Type-C cable, a switch and keycap puller, one extra KTT Kang white switch, a bunch of novelty keycaps, which is a nice touch, and the Noir Timeless82 keyboard itself. What we have here is the nostalgic variant, which is essentially the light colored option, but this is also available in futuristic variant, which is color black. As you can tell, it looks absolutely retro, especially when you mount the included novelties. The construction is okay with an ABS chassis. It does flex a bit when given a decent amount of force, but overall, it feels relatively solid. It weighs roughly around a kilogram, which is decent enough, especially the fact that the plate is lightweight, made out of polycarbonate plastic and not the usual cheaper steel plate. Again, it features an exploded 75% layout with a substantial amount of partition between the key cluster and a good use of space, putting the LED indicators right in between here. Around the keyboard, we also have chamfered edges and curved corners, and overall, it just looks clean and tidy. The stock cherry profile PBT die sub keycaps are okay, but there are things that I particularly don't like about it. The bold fonts on the alphas and thin fonts on the modifiers and other keys are okay. However, I'm not a fan of the somehow afterthought small macOS sub-legends here and the misaligned F7 key. Honestly, I didn't notice this at first until one of you pointed it out on our livestream unboxing. Other than that, a pretty decent set of stock keycaps. On the other side of things, I like the simple design of the OLED display with a bit of a recessed platform that somehow reminds me of old retro devices. As you can tell, this keyboard also features a high-profile case design, hiding all the switches for a cleaner look. Aside from that, the chassis also features a sort of two-tone colorway with a solid off-white top cover and a translucent bottom case to give way for the RGB underglow. It is also slightly slanted for the traditional ergonomic form factor. Looking at the back, we have a subtle Noir logo at the center and the recessed USB Type-C port right here. At the bottom, we have 5 rubber feet and 4 flip-out stands with 2 shorter ones, and all of them have rubber tip as well. We also have the compartment for the 2.4 GHz USB dongle and the mode switch for its tri-mode connectivity. It is not magnetic and just uses friction, but it's tight enough to securely hold the dongle. Lastly, here at the bottom, we have a rather large aluminum badge, which makes it a bit more premium than it actually is. Now, the keycaps are made out of durable PBT plastic with permanent die sublimated characters, and what impresses me the most here is the thickness at around 1.6mm. This is kinda rare, especially when it comes to stock keycaps on pre-built keyboards. Usually it's just around 1.3 to 1.4mm if you're lucky, and some are even just around 1.1 to 1.2mm. So this is really nice. This means it'll help with the overall deeper sound of the keyboard. Now, in terms of switch choice, what we have here is KTT Kang White, but this keyboard is also available in JWK Ultimate Black. The KTT Kang White is a smooth linear switch with polycarbonate top housing, nylon bottom housing with a smooth palm stem. It has an actuation force of around 50 grams and bottoming out force of around 58 grams. It is also slightly lubed out of the box, which is nice. Now, the PCB itself also features south-facing hot swappable sockets, which we'll take a closer look at later on the Teardown Experience. It supports both 3-pin and 5-pin switches. And not only that, but this keyboard also features screw-in stabilizers with a decent amount of factory lube out of the box. And thanks to all the sound dampening materials inside, it ties everything together for a pretty good sounding and feeling pre-built keyboard. And to get a better understanding of that, here's a sound test for you guys. Now before we move on, let me show you real quick the available default details on the OLED display. We have time, connection status, and battery life. Next, we have a spaceship, Timeless82 logo, and nostalgic vinyl record player. Later, I'll show you how to fully customize this using the software. Overall, at least from the surface, the Noir Timeless82 seems to be a pretty good pre-built mechanical keyboard, especially for its price. With that said, let's go ahead and tear this keyboard apart. Honestly, like some of the recent keyboards that I've reviewed, this one also doesn't require any further mods as it already sounds and feels really good out of the box. But if you really need to dig deeper inside, all you have to do after removing the switches and keycaps is to gently but firmly pull away on the sides of the top housing to pry away the plastic clips. It may seem hard at first, but with enough force, the clips will eventually snap out, especially after successfully removing some of them already. After that, you can now easily lift the top cover up. But you have to be careful when lifting the PCB and plate combo, so as to not damage the two cables connecting the two batteries to the PCB. Removing these cables is honestly quite challenging. I tried using just my fingers and then a switch puller to no avail, so I tried using a pointed tweezer and gently pushing it out like so. Now we have access to the bottom case, where we have a quite dense silicone case dampener, which makes sense since there's an ample amount of space here. If you want, you can also use other materials for filling the space instead of the stock silicone dampener. Next, right here we have two batteries for a total of 8000 mAh. It is worth noting though that this is the case for both the nostalgic and futuristic variants, but when it comes to the classic and bare bones variant, it's only going to be half of it at 4000 mAh. I just wanted to point that out. Now we also have a bunch of silicone dampeners around the bottom case to help isolate unwanted sounds, absorb impact, and help with the overall sound and feel. Now looking closer at the PCB, the hot swap sockets are made by CIY, which honestly I'm not a fan of, especially with the issues of the Fantech MaxFit 81. I prefer Kailh hot swap sockets instead. But we cannot say for sure if this is also the case here, because even though they share the same brand of socket, the soldering job could be different. And as far as I can tell here, the soldering job looks decent enough. All the pins are properly covered and secured. So yeah. Speaking of MaxFit 81, I already received a replacement PCB and I'll share with you an updated video on that soon. Now, if you also need access to the foam in between the PCB and plate, all you need to do is remove the screws around the PCB like so. Again, the plate is made out of polycarbonate plastic, which is significantly more flexible than the typical steel or aluminum plate. We also have some dampeners underneath the spacebar, which is nice. Here we have the dense plate foam, which is made out of porous material. And then we also have a port and switch pad to make the sound signature more poppy. Now, the OLED display is easily detachable, which is nice, just in case you need to replace it in the future. And finally, we have the screw-in stabilizers, which again are substantially lubed and not overdone. It is also worth noting that the USB Type-C port is soldered directly into the PCB, which has its own downside. More on that later. Overall, construction and components-wise, the Noir Timeless82 offers a ton of value out of the box. By the way, if you find this video interesting or at least informative, kindly consider subscribing to help me grow this channel. Thank you. Now let's talk about the features and functionalities before we dive deeper into the OLED customization and software. And instead of pointing them out one by one, I'll just save you time by showing the different functionalities and key combinations on the screen. And now here are the different lighting effects available on this keyboard. We also have RGB underglow or edge RGB lighting around, which can be toggled separately from the alphanumeric keys. Now, since the USB Type-C port is integrated with the PCB, they had to change the orientation of the F2 and F3 keys to north-facing. Thankfully, it is not too jarring, especially with the set of keycaps. Now, you can connect up to 4 devices with this keyboard, 3 via Bluetooth and 1 via the 2.4 GHz USB dongle. Now, depending on your connection, the OLED display will show up the corresponding icon like wired, Bluetooth 123, and 2.4 GHz USB dongle. We also have the battery level here, and as for the time, you have to connect the keyboard via wired mode and then reset it to factory settings to automatically adjust. However, I cannot seem to find a way to adjust it to a 12-hour format. Now, after a while, it will automatically show the Timeless82 screensaver logo, changing from black to white. Now, in terms of customizations, aside from the default animations that I showed you earlier, you can also customize them via the software. You can paint your own and upload the frame or several frames if you want. You can also reverse the color like so and erase it using the tool if necessary. But really, what most of us will do here is just import either an image or a GIF. Here's the thing though, since what we have here is essentially a black and white matrix, it's kind of a hit or miss if a specific animation or image will show up properly. So it's a bit of a trial and error, especially for more complex images. However, if you upload GIFs specifically made for small OLED displays like this, you can get some pretty impressive animations like this awesome nostalgic stickman fighting scene. This display supports at least up to 120 plus frames, and you can also adjust the interval of the frames to make the animation slower or faster. Uploading GIFs here is pretty fast compared to my experience with the Red Magic keyboard. You have to keep in mind though that you'll need to clear all the frames first, and in some cases, delete some frames before uploading another GIF. Because if you don't delete existing frames and upload a shorter GIF, it will mess up the animation as it will just add up to the existing frames. So make sure to clear and remove all the frames before uploading a new one. The annoying thing here is that there's no option to delete or subtract all frames at once. You'll have to do it one at a time, which is frustrating. Other than that, overall, with the right kind of image and GIF, you can definitely showcase cool and fun animations here. Now while we're here, why don't we talk about the rest of the software, which by the way, looks almost exactly the same as what the new Nufy Field 75 uses, just different color. Inside the software, we have the basic stuff like multiple profiles, export, copy, reset, delete, and import. And then up here, we have the language and software version. Under the lighting tab, we have the different lighting effects that I showed you earlier, but we also have the audio wave effect where the RGB lighting can sync with the music you're playing. Of course, you can also adjust the colors, direction, brightness, and speed here. Under the button settings tab, we can customize the keys to a different function like other keys, mouse keys, multimedia and system shortcuts, macros, and the usual options. You can record your macros under the macro management tab and map them on any key under the button settings tab. Now under the other settings, we have Windows Lock, an option to interchange WASD with the arrow keys, and the option to toggle between full NKRO and 6-key rollover. We also have polling rates up to 1000 Hz, and you can also summon the default system keyboard settings here if necessary. And lastly, we have the view screen tab for customizing the OLED display. Now performance-wise, NKRO works in all modes, including both the wireless modes, which is nice and means you can press as many keys as you want at the same time without conflicts. And if necessary, you can also limit it to 6-key rollover using the software. I also didn't encounter any major issues when it comes to wire stability, though I would highly suggest using a USB hub or an extension when using the 2.4 GHz dongle to avoid any wireless interference, especially for gaming. By the way, expect some changes to our content as I'm planning on slowly introducing more variety in terms of products and not just mechanical keyboards. I want to review monitors, audio devices, streaming gears, budget desk setup accessories, and things around that nature, and I hope you're cool with that. Overall, to conclude, there's nothing much to dislike about the Noir Timeless82 aside from the misaligned F7 font and the two north-facing switches. The build quality is decent enough, the design is fairly clean, minimal, and nostalgic, and it packs a lot of modern features with pretty much all the usual sound dampening materials. It also has decent preloop switches and stabilizers that altogether make up for a very good sounding and feeling keyboard right out of the box. The OLED display, while not as advanced and flexible as other keyboards, is better than most, and with the right type of GIF, could provide some fun and timeless animations. I just hope it also has a dedicated volume knob to ultimately check all my boxes. And there you have it guys, thank you for watching. Huge thanks to Gosu Gaming Gears for sending this in. Full disclaimer, while Gosu Gaming Gears did send this keyboard, they did not have any say on this review, and they'll see this the same time as you'll do. If you're interested in this keyboard and you want to support the channel, please use my affiliate links below. It'll help me a lot without any extra cost to you. Thank you for watching, subscribe if you like this, and see you next time. Have a great day guys, you're awesome.